Good morning. Saturday. And we're here to continue with, I was going to say Rapunzel, but no, we're here with Cinderella this week. This story you think is so simple. And so as I was reviewing it, and in order to talk about it today, it's such a rich story. You think, oh, she's at home and this is the way her sisters and stepmother are, and then she goes to the balls and that's it. That isn't it. There's so much there. There's an incredible amount there. So there is a lot of, not a lot, but some references to the alchemical process in this story. And I don't think I mentioned this last week, but in the book I go to it in depth. Here I'm not going to go over it. I might mention a few things just on the surface, but that's another aspect of this story which is really interesting and rich. So where we left off last week was that understanding that she is in the process of transforming victim consciousness, which is completely understandable, right? With that stepmother and those stepsisters, and her mother died, and her mother told her to be a good girl. And I talked about this last week and said it's so funny because, not funny, but women talk about this, right? And then this week I happened to hear something, and it was like women talking about how they had to get out of this good girl kind of role. So that was interesting. Just a kind of a link from the universe. So transforming victim consciousness, it's what's important is, one of the things important in this is, in the process there's this falling into this feeling of helplessness. And when there's helplessness, then you're in a situation where you feel like you have no control, you have no say, it is what it is, and it can push that victim consciousness button. And then what can happen is that can become global. It can be this feeling like everything, it feels like it puts you into this place of victim consciousness. So through this process, it's important to begin to really see that it isn't global, and that this, in this process of kind of going back and forth, which we've talked about, this weaving together of the opposites, there'll be this victim and then not victim. It's understanding that this is just one situation. It's getting triggered in order to be cleared. It's not, an inevitable, never-ending, locked-in situation. That's the whole point of the story, and really the whole point of the initiation. In that place of being triggered, it's noticing and seeing evidence of the opposite. So looking for evidence that, in fact, I'm not a conscious or not a victim in this situation, but I have agency. The way to get there is to accept and feel whatever comes up. So when we get triggered into victim, it's so easy to avoid it. Let's face it, most of us have had a lifetime of avoiding fear, and we have all these great little mechanisms to kind of divert attention. So to sit with fear, that is the most intense. If I have clients and they come to me and the first thing we have to deal with is fear, I'm like, I'm really sorry, but this is the deep end of the pool. This isn't the shallow end of the pool. So it's a challenge to jump in there, but sometimes you have to. So it's understanding, accepting, and allowing, and being with it like it's a little child that's afraid. So just being with that part of yourself that most likely is from childhood, and allowing it to have some space and to be present to it. And then typically the fear will diminish as you are with it and see it. Being honest, right? This is where Byron Katie can come in. Is the story I'm telling true? Is the way that I am perceiving this situation actually the way it's really happening? Because our past creates these lenses, which we've talked about as patterns, And the way that we see the pattern is that it's a lens, that it's like everything is love. And then you have certain lenses, and and love goes through that lens, and it appears as a pattern. So to be able to see that, and then what can happen is sometimes that pattern is projected, that sense of that kind of a habitual situation can be projected onto situations that aren't even reflective of that really aren't that situation repeating itself. So it's really great to be able to see what is actually happening here. Is it happening, and is my interpretation of it the way that it really is appearing in front of me? We tend to look at things based on our past experience, because to not is to be in the unknown, and it's to be in the uncertainty. And we typically avoid that as much as we avoid fear. So to transform the inner masculine from the passive, weak masculine, the father consciousness, into an empowered support, right? That's taking us from victim, because that's the father, and not defending, not protecting, not standing up for her. We talked about that last week. And we're shifting, trying to shift, we're in the process of shifting that into an empowered masculine who values the feminine, right? Because her dad doesn't. Values the feminine, stands up for her, and supports her, sees her. So what happens? The all-important invitation comes from the king, which would be new masculine consciousness, empowered masculine consciousness. So this represents a shift already happening here, right? What happens is Cinderella is enlisted to begin to get the girls ready for the ball. And then she kind of dawns on her, well, I'd like to go. So, hey, stepmother, what do you say? Can I come too? And she's like, of course you can't come. Of course you're not enough as you are. You'll embarrass us. You're dirty. You don't know how to dance. You can't come. So Cinderella cries, which means she has fallen into victim consciousness, which you might say, that's bad, because we have all this judgment in our culture about this idea of being a victim, but it isn't bad. It is good. Why? Because it's showing us what she has inherited. It's not like she's choosing this. It's not like she's a bad person because she's here. It's an inheritance. And in my personal opinion, I think that the strongest people, strongest souls who incarnate on this planet, choose challenging lives because they think when they're on the other side that they're strong enough to come down here to take on that mantle that's handed to them from their ancestors, from the life that they have in childhood, and says, I can do this. I'm strong enough. I can transform this consciousness. I know I can do it. So as opposed to seeing that person as weak, helpless, victim, blah, 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 they probably were the strongest people on the other side, the strongest souls on the other side. Guess we're not technically people on the other side. So she is in this place, falls into victim consciousness. Please, please, please. Can I go? Can I go? Can I go? And finally, this stepmother gets tired of hearing her, relents and says, fine, 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 fine. You can come. But first, the initiatory task. You have to separate this bowl of ashes and lentils. Now, we've talked before about the ash, and the ash represents the permanent. So what we're separating is the permanent from the impermanent. Typically, you'd think the lentils were what was saved and the ash gotten rid of. But in this case, because it's a fairy tale and we're looking at symbolism, not literal, right? You see that what's in fact important here is the ash. So she's beginning this process of separating what is mine, what is not mine. We talked about this with the sisters, taunted her by doing this. So here's like a test. So with the sisters, she had all this time to begin to kind of go through this process. But here we're in a new moment because the invitation is something new. She's being invited into a new consciousness. And so now, how is she going to get into that new consciousness? By meeting experiences and meeting them in a new way, right? What can be new about this is she's in this moment. She can't do this. She doesn't have she couldn't possibly separate all of these in 1 hour. So she calls on the birds. And the birds come in and peck the lentils and separate them from the ash. So, I'm sorry, the first one is 2 hours. She does it in 2 hours. The second time that she goes back to the stepmother, says, I've done it, can I go? The stepmother's like, of course you can't go. She cries, and then finally stepmother's like, oh, for heaven's sakes, okay, this time you can go if you can separate 2 bowls in 1 hour. So she goes back in the kitchen. She knows how this works now. She just calls on the birds. So this is the change. This is the change where, let's say in the past, she may have believed she had to do it all herself. But we know also from the past that when she put that hazel branch on her mother's grave and it grew into the tree, she would ask the tree for what she wanted and needed. And the bird in the tree would throw it down. So she knows she's already established this relationship with this bird, which represents, we talked about as a symbol, connecting above and below, connecting spirit, bringing messages from spirit. So she's accessing this other party. So this might seem on a cursory reading to be not relevant, but it really is relevant, because when you're looking at something through the intellect, then you're looking at something through the past. This is a situation that she's never encountered before. She can't solve it based on the past. She can only solve it. She needs some new way to approach the problem, right? She's being invited into a new level of consciousness. And then what she's accessing is other ways of knowing. She needs intuition. She needs the body's knowing. She needs other ways of accessing information other than the intellect, which only has the past to go on. That's what the birds represent. They represent a new way of approaching. So second time, calls on the birds again. They come in, peck, separate it all out. She's done it in the allotted time. And still, the stepmother's like, you are not going. You don't have a dress. You can't dance. You're going to embarrass us. No matter what she does, right, with the good mother dead, no matter what she does, the stepmother says, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. This is an inner state of consciousness that keeps us from traditionally from stepping out. That what's tried is just never quite works, and it never is quite enough. When the invitation comes, right, there's no mention of a queen. There's no mention of a queen. So it's interesting because this is almost like another place where that good mother is not alive. So it's kind of like this restating of the situation. So there are going to be 3 balls, and 3 is the number of rebirth and transformation. And it's a magical number, right? How many times in a fairy tale is it 3 times, 3 times, 3 times? So this is a phase of transformation. So it's a process. The balls are going to be a process of uniting this new masculine and the feminine, but it's not like the old feminine, right? This victim consciousness feminine. It's a process of uniting the new feminine with the new masculine. So this is going to happen 3 times. And this is about listening to that intuition. That's the connection to the feminine. And then taking action is the new masculine. that is like the way the two work together in terms of receiving and taking action. If the masculine is like the father consciousness, then it doesn't value the intuition. It doesn't hear the intuition. It doesn't think it has relevance. And this will happen in the process of beginning to acclimate ourselves to following the intuition because we're just not used to it. So you're not used to listening. You're not used to hearing. There's a process of discerning the difference between the intellect and the intuition. So you know which one to act on, which one is relevant, which one isn't. So she asks and begs to go, which means that the power is right now in the stepmother. So when she asks, it's a projection. So in this process of initiation, it's pulling back those projections of power and noticing, oh, I've given my power away there, take it back. I've given my power away there, take it back. Where else have I given it away? Okay, this is what I believe. That's projecting my power. I have to take that back. And it's keeping on going through that process of bringing it back home, bringing it back home. Freedom isn't in the hands of another. Sorry, so this process of asking for permission from the stepmother means that there's a projection of the belief also that not only does she have the power, but that she is the freedom. So this is a conflict of opposites. This is an inner conflict between these two parts of herself, the part that asks for what she wants, and then the part that believes she can't have it. We see this a lot with those two stepsisters. That's often what they represent as this polarity. So fortunately, for our story and our heroine, she persists. She doesn't give up and is beginning to develop this new inner masculine. See, this is where people often are mistaken when they say she's waiting for the prince. She's not waiting for the prince. She is asking. She is taking action. She is accessing the intuition. She is doing this on her own. She hasn't even met him yet, right? So she's persisting. She's not giving up. And this new masculine is starting to stand up for her, unlike her father consciousness. So her pattern here is a fear of being seen and not enough. And with the stepmother, right, it's never enough. So she's vacillating now between this polarity as well, seen, not seen, enough, not enough, going back and forth. She has allies now in the unseen world that help her to achieve what she wants to achieve, to become what she's going to become, to align with the truth of who she is. And this is true for us as well. We have allies that are in the unseen world that are assisting us. And the more that we open and accept and trust and interact with this, whether it's through intuition or other ways of knowing through dreams, is a way to begin to build experience and build faith and trust in that unseen world. So she's separating what's true from what's not true. And the stepmother is basically projecting shame, that she would be an embarrassment. So that's something that you have to sit with, is when you're in that polarity. Just like the fear is to sit with the feeling of I'm not enough. I'm, embarrassed. I'll embarrass myself. I can't expose myself. Like whatever that it is that's coming up, it's important to really allow it to be there. And the frustration, when you hit that, it's never enough. When you get to that point, to sit with that frustration and allow it to pass. And if you can sit through it and really witness it and allow it to be there, then often on the other side of it, you get to a point of calm. And that's usually where it's easier to access the intuition and take action on it. So to transform this pattern, she needs to see the belief, the thoughts, the stories that she's telling about the situation. See, what am I telling? Feel the feelings that come up, whatever's being triggered by the situation, allowing it, taking back the judgments, right? Because we know the stepsisters and the stepmother are in judgment. So there's this judgment and projections are all having to come back. So looking through the situation that's happening and seeing where the projections are, where the triggers are, what's going on, to be able to begin to pull back the power and pull back what's been given away. The good and the bad. I guess I'm just kind of emphasizing the power and stuff, but all of it, because the stepmother's a part of her, right? So it's accepting that part of herself as well. So it's understanding that this is merely an opportunity to grow and learn more about myself. So being in a situation that's challenging is helpful. It's a gift because it's allowing us to clear and remember, the one who's being triggered, the one who knows how to do this is the one who's becoming initiated, the one who's being guided to freedom. So we're collecting evidence for the opposite, understanding that she's worthy of good, right? And she's worthy of good in situations, in herself, and seeing it in others. Like we all are equal. So ideas of unworthiness are not true. They're just not true. And when you've grown up like her, that can be a challenge to believe, because it's like this assumption that so many of us have. So many people got, especially as women, were laden with this idea of unworthiness. So what happens next? Yay! Cinderella breaks the rules. Yes, she does. It's a critical step in her initiation. You see it in many of the initiations. They break the rules. Stepmother saying, you can't go, you're not enough. And here is a change. So in addition to persisting before and getting the help of the birds, now she doesn't fall into victim consciousness. So here we have this back and forth. Before she was falling into it, now she's not again. She's just taken action. So they leave. She goes to the tree and she asks for a gold and silver dress and silver shoes. This is important symbolically because gold is the sun and it's considered spirit and it's considered masculine energy. Silver is the moon. It's feminine. Water. Sun is fire. So it's the bringing together in this dress of the opposites, right? Completely and totally reflects the fact that she's going to the ball and going to meet the prince. So again, it indicates she's uniting these things before she even meets him. She's not waiting for him to rescue her. She's a woman that's got a mind of her own. She's on her own journey. The birds respond as before because she has faith and she trusts. So starting with the little things and building to the bigger things. And when the bigger things come, the faith and the trust is there. It grows with experience. The first union is here. This dress, the first ball. So the challenge comes. You might feel triggered. Witness the emotion. Allow it to pass. Feel the calm. And then listen for the solution. And then the more that you do this, the less that you fall into that kind of prolonged victim consciousness. This is taking your power back. She knows what to do and she does it. This is the initiation. This is her transformation from victim to empowerment. Yeah. So she goes to the first ball. The castle represents a new state of consciousness. So she's, again, going to be this movement from the new state of consciousness to the old. And so here we have her moving into the new state of consciousness. What does this feel like to be in this new situation? This is a significant change because the prince recognizes her. The new masculine recognizes her. He sees her. He only dances with her and no one else. This is about dedication. It's about focus. And that's what the masculine brings to the table. That energy is the focused dedication, commitment, one thing at a time. It's not about having 20 projects. It's about narrowing it down, staying focused, taking action, and going forward. And this is where the intuition is critical, because it's taking you someplace new. She's not recognized by her own family. This is, we talked about before about this being like all the characters are inner. We can also see it as characters or other characters are outer. So on an outer sense, they can't see her because they still have the old framework and the old lens. So when she shows up as her new self, they don't see it. This can be a challenge because people will want you to stay the way that you are. They won't want you to change because it makes them uncomfortable. Not everybody, but some people. And so to have people who persist in insisting that you are the way that you were instead of the way that you're becoming can be challenging. But the thing is that we're becoming inner referential, not outer referential. That's what a part of the shift is, moving that outer reference, matters what they think, to inside, it matters what I think. To what they see, it matters what they see and what they think of me. It matters what I think and what I see in me. This is the shift, the outer, inner, outer, inner. It's becoming inner referential. You can't decide who you are and what's happening based on what's happening in the world. It's the wake of the boat. Everything comes from inside. The outside reflects the inside, so the inside has to be where the change comes from. That's why the heroine can't be saved by the prince. That doesn't work. Not the world we live in. Family can't see her. They see her through their projections. And they haven't done the work to pull those projections back, so chances of them seeing her differently are pretty slim. So even the challenge is that even when people don't see who you're becoming, it's to persist anyway. She dances only with the prince as well. This new masculine isn't like her father because he is committed to her. He does see her. So she has some sense of freedom here from the past by seeing through new eyes and not through the lens of the past. This is a bit of a challenge. This is kind of because what you're seeing sometimes is still the past, but you have to be able to wear the lens of the new and what wants to be created in the new consciousness while the old is still present. So the family is there. They're in the ballroom, but she has to wear this new consciousness in front of them and persist even though they're there and can't see her. So this is a time of focus and discernment. Again, that's masculine, cutting through, discerning, parsing, not to scatter your energies. Keep them focused, keep them dedicated to that task at hand, and keep following it. Remain committed to your dreams and take action towards them every day, even if it's small. It adds up. So she dances with him all night, and then she's tired. It's time to go home. She is determining, what do I feel and what do I want? Okay, so her dependence is not on him. She's like, okay, this is about me. What do I feel? I'm tired. I want to go home. He wants to walk her home. She says no. She's not ready yet. She's not ready for him to know her at that level. So again, we might perceive as maybe an outer, right? She's stepped into this, but now her consciousness is going back. We've talked about the opposites, right? She's weaving the opposites. So she goes back. She doesn't want him to follow her or help or take her home. She's honoring her own needs, and he does follow her anyway. She slips into the dovecote, and the dovecote is the house of, we could say, the mother, like the big M mother. And that's what's missing. That's what the stories are telling us is missing, the feminine, the good feminine mother. So she slips into that. She goes up. Dovecote's typically up. She goes into it, and then the prince gets the father and says, the prince, the feminine from the ball is in there. I saw her go in there. He cuts it down. She's not in there. So there's this link, right, between this dovecote and the house that she's in. She reverts back to where she was. But when they look inside, there's nothing there. This is another aspect of becoming more conscious, because when you look inside in the spiritual sense, when you look inside for the soul, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There's nothing there, so to speak. So I thought that was kind of interesting. When from a spiritual sense, there really is nothing inside. It's not like something. It's not like you have the sense of your body as being physical. So they're weaving now of the above and below, the in and the out. We're seeing this more now. Changing the victim to creator consciousness. Isn't that cool? So the first discernment was separation, separating the lentils and the peas from the ash, and now we're getting to the point of union. She dances with the masculine, which is a shift from the material family, the materialistic. Remember the sisters? Oh, I want dresses and diamonds and pearls. To the spiritual. We have this movement now, which we also saw in Rapunzel, if you remember. It was really clear. So we have to stay grounded in the new experiences, which is in the body. That's also partly that connection to the mother. It's a more physical presence that when you're present, so when you're triggered, you're out of the moment. You're kind of catapulted into the past, let's say. But the more that you work with that and become present, the more that you are able to be in the moment and make a choice in the moment that's different, and not be caught up in what was, but not just be in the moment, be able to receive information in the moment and make a different choice and see the situation with new eyes, right? When you're present, you can see what's actually here, what's actually showing up. With this stillness and the mother and the spirit and the soul, you're getting rooted in stillness and silence, peace, calm. And then when situations come that have in the past might have triggered you, they're allowed to kind of come and go. And there's not this kind of stuckness in the past. So this is building a new self on a solid foundation, right? This is biblical. And that foundation is stillness and peace. Then there's this anchored place of existence in the world that isn't depending on the outer circumstances. It's inner referential. She goes to the second ball. She doesn't even ask for permission. Doesn't even ask this time. So we could see that's another shift, right? She's now the powers coming inside. She's the vehicle for her desires. She just goes to the tree and asks and expects. That's also important, is this expectation that good will come. The expectation that I deserve, that I am worthy, that I can have what I want. I can be what I want. I can do what I want. And she goes to the ball. And when she comes back from the ball, he wants to follow her again. He does follow her again. And she goes up into a pear tree. It's another symbol for the feminine. But we talked about the tree as being a connector of the above and the below. This is connecting spirit and soul. Weaving again. In and out to the castle, back out. Into the castle, back out. Up the dovecote, back down. Up the tree, back down. They cut the tree down, nothing there. Being seen, hiding. Being seen, hiding. Being seen, hiding. And that is part of the process. So there's no judgment. There's no judgment of yourself or herself in the process of coming out in a new way. Because you do it, you might retreat. You might do it, you might retreat. You might do it, you might experience resistance in the world in the form of the stepmother may take physical form. This has happened to me. It is a bit of a challenge. But you can survive. You will persist, because remembering that's the wake of the boat. Remembering the shift is from the outer to the inner. So if you meet her in the world and she shows up and she's not the stepmother but someone else, then you just sit with it and allow it and accept it, whatever gets triggered, and it will transform. So she's enough at the ball, not enough at home. Enough at the ball, not enough at home. So she's going back and forth between these things in order to transcend them eventually and come into a unitary perspective that is not in the dualistic, judgmental, good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, left, right, in, out. God, I can't tell you how fast this time goes by. Oh my gosh. So obviously we're going to have to move till next week, which is okay because I have another whole page of notes. You got to love her. She is not a weak victim, not passively hanging around. Like, how could you ever think that? How could you ever believe that these heroines are passive? There's nothing about this situation that she's passive about. She's totally on point. She's totally facing it. She might fall into victim consciousness a little bit, but she pulls herself out. Excuse me. All good. Okay. Thank you for watching. Next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. See you then. Have a great day.